May Jesus be praised and onward with Mary. A blessed and holy day to all of you, dear children, in the Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary, and in the most chaste heart of Saint Joseph. Welcome back, and thank you for joining us as we begin our morning feature, Saints and Coffee. Today is Friday, the 4th of April, and indeed, it falls on the Friday of the 4th week of Lent. In the Vitus Ordo, St. Vincent Ferrer is also commemorated. This extraordinary, no, it's not today, it's tomorrow, because I checked the martyrology, so it's tomorrow, I apologize. It's a female saint today, I believe. Tomorrow is St. Vincent Ferrer, a Dominican saint who was greatly venerated in the past, especially in southern Italy, but also in the north. I've seen quite a few churches, places, and convents dedicated to him, even on the first Friday of the month. Dear children, today is a day of penance, fasting, and prayer. As you can see behind me, as I said on Monday, we have the Holy Face of Manopello that will accompany us until Easter in the segment Saints and Coffee, because the Church, which is a mother, invites us now to look intently at Jesus, at his mystery of love, at the passion that Jesus endures for all of us. We must contemplate Jesus in our hearts and thank him, adore him, because he went up on the cross and stretched out his arms for us, dying on the cross. A few weeks ago, Brother Celestino gave a catechesis, and these are the kinds of things that are sometimes said en passant, yet they can remain engraved in someone who listens for a long time, if not forever. He had said in one episode, if you remember, because Jesus, it was a biblical catechesis, one of the last ones, if not perhaps the very last. Why did Jesus die on the cross and not, for example, by stoning and so on? I'll put it in my own words, but this was the message I believe he wanted to convey. Because on the cross, it's beautiful. Because on the cross, his arms are outstretched. We can contemplate him and adore him. That's exactly right. We are in the final Fridays of Lent. In fact, next Friday is the Friday of the Passion of Jesus, the first week of the Passion. And among other things, it will also be the commemoration of Our Lady of Sorrows. So these are days of grace. Let us intensify, dear children, our prayer. Let us pray many rosaries. Let us remain always in prayer, also to protect ourselves from the devil, because of course these are special weeks. These are holy days, and so we must guard ourselves with prayer against the devil's harassment in our minds. Heart. If we are in a state of grace, it is not the heart. We too, priests, strive to remain in a state of grace. We confess to one another, as I will tell you in a moment. Yesterday, Brother Celestino, Don Enrico, and I were together, pleasantly in San Giovanni Rotondo with Padre Pio, although we deliberately did not set foot there, as I will now explain to you, but we were together. I was able to go to confession with Don Enrico. It is always very beautiful, always. I speak from my personal experience, which I believe is the same as yours. That is, we experience God's forgiveness, but we must humble ourselves before God, before the holy minister. We must not skirt around our sins, our sinful limitations. Mine are apparently quite conspicuous. It's just me. With original sin, apparently in the Catholic Church, because I'm always pointed out as the worst. It's probably true, but when I go to confession, I experience the embrace of God break time and anything, which gives me new strength. You can really feel how the forces of evil are disturbed by the sacrament of confession, perhaps even more than by the Mass. I don't know. I cannot say that for sure. I don't feel I can state it with certainty, but it seems to me that the devil is angrier when you see the confessionals full. And besides, if we look at the lives of great saintly priests, from the holy Curé of Ars to Padre Pio, we see that the confessional truly became the place of reconciliation, where one experiences the infinite love of God. And it is an experience lived not only by us priests, but also by the small remnant. The fellow brothers can bear witness, some more, some less, probably most of all Brother Celestino, who is particularly assigned to this ministry of reconciliation, of people who come to confess after 20 or 30 years. All it takes is a catechesis by Don Minutella, sometimes without him even realizing it, a reflection by Brother Celestino, a thought from Don Enrico, and so on. And they convert and then come to confess in a process that is quite marvelous. These are the last days of Holy Week, and please excuse my momentary distraction. Truly, These are the concluding days of the penitential journey of Lent. So let us intensify prayer, penance, and self-denial. And each of us should work where we are weakest with the grace of God. Today is, of course, a day of abstinence from meat and of fasting, penance, and prayer. At 5 o'clock, there will be the final exercise of the Way of the Cross, led by our seminarians. Here's the post at 5 o'clock from the Saint Curé of Ars Seminary. And then this evening at 9 o'clock, there is the prayer of the Pioneers of the Rosary with the families. Today, a family from Sardinia will join in remotely. This Friday evening appointment at 9 o'clock is really beautiful. To come together again in prayer, because there is a great need for it. Let us indeed intensify our prayer in these final days of Lent. So at 9 o'clock in the evening, we'll meet for this moment of faith and prayer. Last night there was a catechesis. I had told you it would be useful to listen to it. Thank you. I received some interesting reflections. An important catechesis is available if you wish to listen again. On the playlist of Radio Domina Nostra, it's that one there. The mark of the beast is 666. Actually, I didn't manage to finish, but that's not a limitation. I'd say it's actually a resource. So we will most likely explore the number 666 in more depth. Next Thursday, then? However, we have reflected deeply on the theme of the mark of the beast, on how it is made relevant today, on its meanings, on its consequences. Those who haven't listened to the short one, I would suggest doing it because it's an interesting catechesis. The book, The Symphony of the Lamb, like all my other books, I've written more than 20, is always available by calling the office of Radio Domina Nostra. This is The Symphony of the Lamb, by collecting them at prayer meetings. Today is Friday, the 4th of April, and we are getting ready for the last 3 meetings. Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Tomorrow, Saturday, the 5th of April, will be in Bari. Here's a call to all the faithful of the small Puglian remnant. Do not miss this event. There it is. Look at that lovely photo, because the 3 of us, Celestino, Don Enrico, and yours truly, will all be at the Hotel Majesty. At 4:30 p.m., there will be a good opportunity for confessions. The Rosary, the consecration to Our Lady, a brief introductory greeting from me, the Mass, and then, after the Mass, the final farewells. If there are a few minutes left, though that's rather unlikely now given the pace we're keeping, perhaps even a moment of adoration. I would like to point out that tomorrow evening, due to the fact that the hall must be handed over on time, the catechesis will not be broadcast from the prayer meeting, from the place of the meeting. However, I will already be, in fact, somewhat on the road. I will stop where I'm staying and then meet up on Sunday, because tomorrow evening, today is Friday, so it's the last day of Saints and Coffee tomorrow morning. It won't be on, so I remind you that tomorrow is the 5th episode in the series of catechesis, Little and Great Heroes of the Faith, dedicated to Manuel Fodera, the warrior of light. Don't miss it. At this point, you have a beautiful photo, ordinary and at the same time extraordinary. Little Manuel, now almost lifeless, a tiny skeleton. That was perhaps meant to be the final period of his life. Certainly worn out by chemotherapy, and there we see his grandparents at his sides, relatives, perhaps not both paternal and maternal together. Here is little Manuel Fodera, an ordinary, normal child, in whom, however, God has worked a marvelous story, with chisel strokes, as Padre Pio used to say, with chisel strokes, because holiness, dear ones, that's what it is. Get it into your heads. Do you want to go to heaven? Carry the cross. Do you want to go to heaven? Love the cross. Do not run away from trials and suffering. Do not despair. Do not lose heart, because only by embracing the cross, we obtain graces for ourselves and for those around us. So tomorrow evening there is this devotion. On Sunday, the 6th of April, we will be in Lamezia Terme in Calabria. Take heart, little remnant of Calabria. It is one of the increasingly rare gatherings in Italy, the one in Calabria. A bit in Calabria, and lately also a bit in Sardinia. The numbers are always rather limited, but it could be that this time Calabria might surprise us, and so perhaps many faithful will come. Also because we are close to Easter, which means there's the opportunity to go to confession and attend Holy Mass, receiving Holy Communion, on Sunday at 4:30 in the afternoon at the 𝐵𝐼𝐻𝐼𝐻 at the Grand Hotel. And finally on Monday, the last appointment, by now indispensable, the final stop, each time, just as the popes used to return to Rome, now the enemies, back then the Pope. I'm doing it on purpose. Like the Pope this morning, I saw a very beautiful video. Then I'll tell you why. About Paul VI, who was returning from Bogota in Colombia following the International Eucharistic Congress of 1968. He was returning to Fiumicino in 68. It's moving to see the affection of the faithful who are no longer with us. At the airport, nuns, friars, priests, bishops, and above all the holy people of God. And the idea of a cold Paul VI, well, that too was created by the media, to distance people from him, like they did with Ratzinger. Then it's clear that with John Paul II they couldn't do it, because it was impossible. But that's how the media work. They study the subject because they're entirely in the hands of Freemasonry to strike where he is weakest. They struck John Paul II, on the contrary, because of his charisma. Exceptional. But let's get back to Paul VI. People I saw and I still see that they loved him. I have to tell you something. The more I look at images of Paul VI lately, the more I say he truly was a man of God. I say this with emotion, and it's no coincidence that Padre Pio was so fond of him. Yes, when he was Archbishop of Milan, Padre Pio was very fond of Paul VI. Just think, now I'll talk to you about it. Today I'm speaking about this in a moment, but this is already a preview. This book of mine here, which is one of those I care about deeply, Padre Pio, man of God, because it is not only a biographical reconstruction, but also a theological one of Padre Pio's message. Can you believe that I was able to bring back to light a scoop that had gone unnoticed by one of the first biographers of Father Pio? Namely that in February of 1968, everything was ready, February 68. Father Pio was still alive because Paul VI had decided to reach him by helicopter from Rome to San Giovanni Rotondo to meet him, to bless him, because they knew those were the final days of Father Pio's life. Then nothing came of it. Because I was mentioning Paul VI to you, due to the fact that he had returned, though I no longer remember why. The reason, anyway, was to tell you, my dear children, that indeed he returned and received an extraordinary welcome. I made the joke saying it was my return, and he said something very beautiful. Paul VI hears what the Pope said. He now travels around the world, but his home is Rome. Here's a tiny one, Paul VI, barely visible. Bear with us. That's how we treat them. The popes. So, finally, let me remind you to support the project, Radio Domina Nostra, because it's not just Radio Domina Nostra. There's the seminary. There are all the activities we carry forward. Don't leave us hanging. Don't abandon us during the Easter period. Here is the IBAN, the postal current account, the PayPal. Help us, because there's always a great need. Then I'll let you know after Easter what I've decided. As for 𝐏 there's no specific contribution coming in. Substantial. We are always, thank God, left with crumbs. But all the crumbs together, mind you, don't get me wrong, make the bread. But here there's a real loaf missing, according to the criteria, because we all have it on us. So one must always be very careful when someone says, for 𝐏 we'll take care of it. We take on the burden of paying the costs of the works. It would be a miracle which, in my opinion, is now about to fly in the face of all our enemies. That is, a donation from those who say, we'll take care of it, Father. And there are also people who want to do it without saying so, but it must be done, even if one doesn't want it to be mentioned. No one's doing it, so I don't know how to proceed with 𝐓𝐵. It's a shame, as it's a brilliant reality. That one. They even held gay pride events in 𝐓𝐵, despite its tiny population. Let's not forget that. How come? Brother Celestino chimed in too, as I lean towards conspiracy theories about these matters. By nature, he's much less, we had a flat tire a few days ago, it stuck with me. I was thinking about it this morning. If Brother Celestino never tells her so, it's because his words are measured, he asserts. But actually, we mess up a bit too much. We often mess up a bit too much. Often. That guy, when he said exactly that, he mentioned 𝐓𝐵. But what a coincidence, in such a tiny village they go and hold the gay pride in 𝐓𝐵 where the little Tabor is. I'm not saying they did it on purpose. I'm saying The devil knows that there's the little Tabor, and he doesn't want the little Tabor to come true. As long as there are some faithful who bring the loaf of bread, because money is often the dung of Satan, and also what can fight him, the devil. Trust me, because where there is money, there is availability. Indeed, got it? There is providence. In the old calendar, tomorrow is St. Vincent Ferrer's Day. He was a Dominican saint once revered across Italy, with many churches and convents bearing his name. If you help us in May, it would be lovely to announce. There was a substantial independent donation in the sense that the association is not directly involved, but it is the association that manages the donation for carrying out the work. We have all the paperwork, the project plans. Dear children, it takes hundreds of thousands of euros because it's no small thing. That structure there, just imagine if we managed to build it. It would be a masterpiece. We would have a permanent rotation of priests, as we are somehow already doing there in some way. Look, I'll tell you this. Now there in Savigliano, the Piedmontese have surpassed everyone in this, even the Venetians. This is a sensational twist. I'm almost sorry about it. The Venetians know, however, they managed to set up Casa Betania in no time at all, which is clearly a more limited reality and less targeted. Even if the Piedmontese bishops have spoken out like the bishops of Veneto, those individually, which perhaps was a more successful tactic, so to speak out individually. It's a tactic that works better. Padre first, then Treviso. By the way, since they attacked us, I'm not saying that we are the cause, but it is historically connected. Padua is organizing a seminar with the other dioceses. Mind you, this is a historic event, because the Diocese of Padua has never needed to join or come together with other seminaries. All right, the praiseworthy, extraordinary Diocese of Padua, which is the Catholic Veneto. There, the Catholic Veneto is basically there, in Padua, as they say. Well, nothing. They're there, but the numbers aren't what they used to be. Brother Celestino from the Padua Seminary can vouch for me. The dioceses must be merged. Keep Jesus in your heart. Thank and adore him. Together, they didn't succeed, even though compared to Veneto, they were cleverer in terms of media involvement. 𝐼 Stampa even, the national newspaper 𝐼 Stampa ran a story on it. But it was no use. We have the numbers, we have the people, and they don't. A bishop celebrates you, in Ivrea, I don't know, where Pinerolo, and there's no one. We celebrate you at home. Bethany, sometimes we have to hold 2 masses, because it's true that the place is small. But we're not short of people. Now, what was I going to say? So there, and I'd like everyone to listen to me on this, because it's something important, then we'll get straight to today's topic, because it's really important. It's quite connected. We're in the midst of persecution. So I'd like to tell you, did you see what came out with Casa Betania? There now, because I'm not joking, the Company of Mary has made itself available because if only there were a detachment. At the time, I thought it was just meant for a life of prayer, even though when we talked about the rule, I too was thinking of the idea of apostolate. Do you remember? Well, God has his own timing, because the little sisters who are there, now 2 have returned and 2 others have gone. There's always Mother Abbess, the one who was interviewed, and they are carrying out a meaningful apostolic mission. People go there to pray with the sisters. Got it? There are anonymous, ordinary days when, as they show me with the photos in the archive I encourage them to keep, there are 20 to 25 people who go to pray with the 3 nuns from the Company of Mary who are there. So what I'd like to say is, just imagine if we did this in Trebassolo, there wouldn't be 20 anymore, there'd be 40 or 50. Careful, I'm Sicilian, so the Piedmontese understand me. It's not like I'm Venetian. And so one could say, you only care for yourself, you're Venetian. On Sunday, I took a photo with a friend from Naples, whom I've known for years, who always carries the flag of the Kingdom of the 2 Sicilies. So just to avoid any misunderstanding, I'm Bourbon or Bourbonist. You decide what to call me. But I must say that if the loaf arrives in Veneto to build the little Tabor, it will explode. The devil does not want it and uses financial obstacles. So if someone understands this, or a group of faithful from Veneto, there is a group of faithful from Veneto who can provide financial assistance, and they say, we'll do it ourselves. Father, don't worry, you'll be able to bring in more little sisters in October, in November, in December. We have them available, they're ready to come up. Then the priests take turns going between Tre Basileghe and Casa Betania, and that's it. Little Tabor, Casa Betania. But Little Tabor was possible to do. The problem now is small. Welcome, Holy and Coffee. I'm wasting time on this several minutes because perhaps I hadn't fully clarified this point. Spread this message of mine, especially in Veneto. Courage, children of Little Veneto, Republic of Venice. Please make sure there are no onions that make us cry, like Capito. I mean, the Bishop of Padua, his name is Cipolla. We have to carry out that project there. It's not possible that the council gave us permission to do it, and we've basically been stuck for at least 5 or 6 months. Praise Jesus Christ, onward with Mary. The association asks me, clearly, for the final word, even though I'm not part of the association. But I understand it's a word of charisma, let's say, a word of trust, so they always wait for me to say yes. In my opinion, we can start. I, on the other hand, up until now have said we cannot begin, because if we invest there, I don't know how everything else will turn out, because there are apostolic journeys. Apostolic, because we are apostles of Mary. Apostolic. And with Don Minutella, Brother Celestino and his entourage, there's little Nazareth, with what you already know. There are various publishing expenses, and so we cannot. So, please, someone for Easter, get moving in Veneto. We need a leader there in Veneto. We need someone to take initiative and say, I don't know, from Veneto, from Treviso, what do I know, from Verona, and say, right, here we go, let's get to work. We're getting busy. Did the Don ask for a loaf of bread? We've got to bring him this loaf. It's useful for us because then in Tre Basileghe we would have a gym available permanently where we could do physical exercises. Understood, a daily gym, meaning you'd go there even if there's no need. You come to Emilia-Romagna if Don Ramon is there. You go to Lombardy if Father Johannes is there to hear your confession. Go there to Padua, in the province of Padua, I think. Province of Padua. Province of Padua. Go there and see for yourselves. But we need to carry out the project because the structure is there, but it needs considerable renovation, which is estimated at around a couple of €100,000, more or less. Brother Celestino's catechesis proves offhand words endure. Having said all this, on this beautiful Friday of Lent that leads us to look to Jesus, here it is. I told you that the holy face of Manopello, which I invite you to keep at home, is for us a symbol. In these days, let us look to Jesus, think of Jesus, and move on to today's episode. Here, the title you now see, I present to you the window. There it is. Padre Pio, where are you? With you, in quotation marks, is Padre Pio's answer. With you, otherwise with whom? I kindly asked the control room to show the photo we had taken yesterday, the 3 priests of the sodality. Let's put it on the main screen so it's easier to see. Here we are in San Giovanni Rotondo, and that behind us is the hill. On the right-hand side, on its right slope, behind we could say Brother Celestino. Behind that hotel is the convent of Padre Pio of St. Mary of Graces. In the center there's me, and to my right, is Father Enrico. Yesterday we wanted to treat ourselves, since we were coming from Campania with Brother Celestino, to a moment of fraternal agape with Don Enrico, who kindly invited us to lunch in San Giovanni Rotondo. I allowed him to choose the meeting place for our lunch together, and he chose Don Enrico. With his family members, the dearest Mama Lucia, whom we always greet with great affection, chose San Giovanni Rotondo. We had a lunch, as everyone knows, in Puglia. That's quite something. We were basically expecting the starters like in Sicily, where, let's be honest, you eat a lot too, but it's not Puglia. Seafood starter. We were discussing it in detail just last night during our lively group discussion among friends. Don Enrico kindly smiled with us when we pointed it out, but he's not surprised because he's from Puglia. His own mother doesn't do it either. Right then, seafood starter, Sicilian style. It means they bring you a plate, I don't know, with a bit of seafood salad, a couple of clams, I don't know, some marinated fish, salmon, and so on. No, in Apulia it doesn't work. In Puglia, the seafood starter consists of 3 or 4 dishes. Behind me, as on Monday, is Minutella's holy face and holy and coffee till Easter. The church bids us behold Jesus, his love and passion, with meatloaves like that. Thank goodness, we could only have a first or second course, as a full meal wasn't an option. So Father Pio, where are you? With you? The question is posed by me rhetorically and provocatively. Padre Pio, where are you? With you? Otherwise with whom? Here, it's a phrase that, I'll tell you right away, I heard addressed to me by Padre Pio. No one understood it, first and foremost. Here, Brother Celestino, a fellow friar skeptical about many things, is forced and obliged to believe. I am telling you what I experienced. It is the answer in interlocution that was given to me by Padre Pio. I say this because we arrived in San Giovanni Rotondo in good time, even though Father Enrico was already there waiting for us. We were able to pass tangentially along the road, not inside, but along the Via dei Cappuccini, which is in fact the main street of San Giovanni Rotondo. On the right-hand side stands the Home for the Relief of Suffering. And then at the top, there is the little square with the always evocative facade. And world famous is the convent of the Capuchin friars of Santa Maria delle Grazie, where Padre Pio lived for 50 years, actually 52 years, I believe. Where he lived for the vast majority of his life. Padre Pio of Pietrelcina, the stigmatic friar. The very first thing we noticed, the very first one, at least I did, was the desert. I've lived for 51 years, and very soon I shall be celebrating my 52nd birthday. The first time I went to see Padre Pio was in 1987, 19 years after Padre Pio's death, which sounds like a lot, but it was nothing, because Padre Pio died in 68. I went with the parish, I was a teenager, 87, I was 14 years old. I remember very well the atmosphere there in San Giovanni Rotondo. Ever since I was a child, I was chosen by the Lord for a mission that is now plain for all of you to see, which, whatever the church may say, and however much it is contested, is coming to pass. I have always had a sort of aesthesis, as Origen says, that is, a perception of the mystery. And I didn't want to, I remember it well, I didn't want to leave San Giovanni Rotondo anymore because I had always felt good there. Where there is prayer, where there is the grace of God, where there is the sacred, I no longer wanted to leave. The atmosphere there felt like when Padre Pio was still alive. It felt like you were meeting him with thousands, hundreds, what am I saying? Thousands. Hundreds of thousands of pilgrims break from all over Italy. Italy was truly in San Giovanni Rotondo. You could hear the accent. Venetian and Sardinian, Sicilian, Calabrian, and Piedmontese, you know. Emilian and Tuscan, everyone to San Giovanni Rotondo, prayer groups, coaches, cars, noble pilgrims, and mediocre ones, some shouting while others remain silent. An astonishing thing. San Giovanni Rotondo, a surprisingly supernatural and prayerful atmosphere. It's true that we Italians, as pilgrims, are the ones who go everywhere and fill the sanctuaries around the world, though not in Italy. But San Giovanni Rotondo is different. But when we go to Fatima and Lourdes and to Medjugorje, we Italians are the ones who make the difference. If the Italians don't go, that's how it is. Then there are also other groups, especially the national ones. In France, the French, but it's the Italians who make the difference. But we're loud. Wherever we go, we Italians shout. You can tell we're Italian, because as soon as you cross the Alps, the Austrians speak like this. Asta nehai siniste, venum venehai siniste. Instead, we Italians are like that. Dom Minutella is a good example, one of those who shout. But, beyond the fact that people were shouting, I was 14 years old. I remember that people, apart from a few, used to carry the rosary in their hands. Blessed day, dear children of Jesus and Mary's Sacred Hearts and of St. Joseph's chaste heart. One thing, look, inside the sanctuary you almost felt dizzy from the atmosphere there. It felt like you could smell many people, me too. You could smell the scent of Padre Pio, because he had said he would give signs of his presence. One of the least discreet signs, because Padre Pio is not a saint of discretion. It's in spite of himself. There are men of God in the Church who must surrender to the lack of discretion. It is not a dainty little saintliness, that of Padre Pio. He had promised to be present, and he left time and time again. I remember hearing him on several occasions inside, right in the sanctuary. Once, I can't remember if I was in front of the confessional where he used to hear confessions, but you can imagine a child, a teenager like me, a dreamer, a little angel, even if with tiny horns. Really just imagine the atmosphere. Now, we went back. I hadn't set foot near Padre Pio since 2013, I believe, if I remember correctly. Or even 2012, in fact, so before the arrival of Bergoglio, well, a desert. From the point of view, first of all, when it comes to presence, there was no one, and yet we're just before Easter. Yes, San Giovanni Rotondo may again be full, though not as before. It was always full. As a young priest, I traveled alone to San Giovanni Rotondo for a couple of days. Here, generally around Christmas time, I remember it well. In San Giovanni Rotondo, it's cold. It's very cold. In December, in fact, I would always catch a fever because I would go do the Stations of the Cross on my own. Up there on the hill, there were people, I remember it well, everywhere. The hotels were always full. Yesterday, there was hardly anyone. The hotel and restaurant managers all seemed nervous to me. Before they really were, well, people from Apulia are like that, like all those from the south, open, welcoming, even the restaurant managers. But to me, they seemed offhand, depressed for a moment. There you go. And then numerically, there's no one. The religious tourism enterprise is currently in disarray. But as Don Enrico said, because after lunch, when we took that photo there, I had said I would not set foot inside the basilica. Because, assuming Father Pio's body is really there, now I don't want to scandalize anyone, but I do have some doubts. Anyway, assuming the body is there, it's just a pile of bones. Father Pio, he's not in there, that's for sure, and I'll tell you why. But I had said I'll bring. A few weeks ago, Brother Celestino preached, "Offhand remarks last forever." He said, "I know him, it's the same." And that's when Father Enrico stepped in, always with his elegance, and he said, yes, he said, when I go to San Giovanni Rotondo, I go to pray in front of the crucifix of the Stigmata. As for the rest, he said, it's even rather bleak to linger in the saints' places. And in that regard, I'd like to tell you that the friars, with the faithful's money, this isn't a criticism, well, they arrive. So they asked the father, I don't know if you know him, that holy man of a father, 𝐸𝐺𝐻, entrusted with the task of decorating the new sanctuary with beautiful mosaics in meticulous detail. Those mosaics, since Father 𝐸𝐺𝐻 is, as you know, the serial abuser of consecrated women, well then in Lourdes, they decided there are photos on social media to close off, to cover in the sanctuary of Lourdes the hideous and Masonic iconographic expressions of 𝐸𝐺𝐻's mosaics. So in Lourdes they're covered, while in San Giovanni Rotondo, shamefully, they're still there. And Father Enrico used to say, from what I perceived everywhere, squalor reigns. Emptiness reigns. It seemed to me then yesterday, as we were leaving Padre Pio, while we felt him close to us, that this is the quintessence of what they call the Catholic Church. So then, that of Bergoglio, we've been saying it for such a long time now, is not the Church of Jesus Christ. It is not the Catholic Church. Yesterday, the Italian Episcopal Conference met in person. It turned out to be a truly resounding flop, a complete failure, because the items on the agenda had not been approved by unanimous vote. With about 200 bishops and 400 lay people, the grassroots aren't truly grassroots. They form an elite. What topics might be on the agenda? Not penance, prayer, and conversion, as Padre Pio would say. But watch out, listen carefully. This is Pope Francis's church. It's the question posed to the wretched. A una cum to be addressed. But how can you not understand that? Yesterday I was shouting as I said it, referring to the statements by Tuccio Fernandez about Pope Francis, who is clearly someone in love with the church and a man of integrity. So what I want to say is, what were the topics on the agenda yesterday that the news programs highlighted? Keep Jesus in your heart, thank and adore him. Integration of the gay world. But how many are these gay people asking for a blessing? I mean, is it really that urgent? I get the women at the altar. But how many women are there? Look, maybe it's because by now all the daughters of the little remnant know what I think, so perhaps they don't show off. But I must say that I find serious women in the little remnant, and I'm sure that none of them would ever want to go to the altar with dissonance upon them. Cross-cutting from deaconess or even priestess to saying Mass. Here in Apulia, for example, I think in Taranto, a parish priest, probably with the bishop's permission, allowed a woman to give the homily, to deliver the homily during Sunday Mass, you see. And everyone was happy, everyone. It's total madness. Padre Pio, where are you? Are you with the church? You see behind me, as I said on Monday, we have the holy face of Minutella, which will stay with us until Easter in Holy and Coffee, because the church, a caring mother, now calls us to gaze on Jesus, his mystery of love, and the passion he endures for us. The desert of people in San Giovanni Rotondo seemed real for the first time. It almost makes me want to cry. A town like so many others. San Giovanni Rotondo, it's my first visit. I've never experienced deception. Bergoglio, because the Franciscan friars are basically Bergoglio's armed phalanx with him. St. Francis, an environmentalist and perhaps gay-friendly, yet St. Clare proves otherwise. So I say this, I ask Padre Pio, anguished in my heart. Each of us has a Sinai in their heart. Strive to be in God's grace as far as you can. Because the Catechism of the Catholic Church teaches, one point tragic, something tragic. No one has certainty. And in fact, the saints, and even those among us who want to become saints, we must understand whether our path is genuine if we experience this suffering when it reaches us. The fear that, despite our efforts, we are not in a state of grace. Don't lose heart, otherwise the scrupulous will take their own lives. But the Catechism and Church say so. However, even if we are not certain we are in a state of grace, we do strive to be. We fight against sin. We live our lives to avoid the world. We remain in communion with Jesus and Mary. Then we do have it within our hearts. Sinai, the burning bush, a sort of tabernacle like St. Mary Claret, who carried the host visibly in her heart. So, in my anguished heart, I said, listen, Padre Pio, I hadn't been here since 2013, 2015, but I found that this country where you lived, where you sacrificed yourself, has become the spiritual center of the world, as St. Paul used to say. It seemed to me, and it is, a country like many others. Between San Giovanni Rotondo and San Marco in Lamis, between San Giovanni Rotondo and Manfredonia. Yesterday was the first time I noticed nothing was different. And then he said, listen, Padre Pio, but I also want to say that he's right. Don Enrico is right. There's desolation here, there's emptiness, just like in the whole Bergoglian church. So Padre Pio, where are you? And while I was in the car wanting to smoke a cigar, because heaven often doesn't refrain from reaching out to us, even at rather embarrassing moments. We must hold Jesus in our hearts, thank and adore him. Sometimes you find yourself, it's happened to me, you find yourself for a long time on your knees. I'm talking about the past, waiting for a light to understand what you're doing. Then you go to the bathroom, or you have a moment of relaxation because you're lying in bed watching the Inter football match. Yesterday, by the way, Don Enrico's mom gave me the Easter egg with Inter on it. Thank you, Mama Lucas, the best gift ever. Even if your son is a Juventus supporter, be patient with him. It's a condition that will pass. So, as I was saying, sometimes the grace of God reaches us at unexpected moments, and that's what happened. To me, I was in the car, I wanted to smoke a cigar, we were heading towards the Barese area, and Padre Pio, where are you? That was a question I had repeatedly asked in my heart at lunch, and even as we were arriving in San Giovanni Rotondo. Here's the answer. With you. With you. I cannot give you the details of this dialogue right now. I would like to tell you something. When these dialogues happen, I rarely speak like this. But yesterday I was in one of the most mystical places there are, and then Padre Pio gives me permission. When these dialogues happen with some celestial spirit, some blessed soul, they do not occur in sequence. Like when we talk to each other here on earth. It's hard to explain. In an instant of eternity was said. Everything was said. Then you have to sit down and reconstruct the sequence of the things you said or the things that were said to you, the Madonna, or Jesus, or Padre Pio, or the angels. What a beautiful speech this morning. It's what we called Easter, after all. He died on the cross, arms outstretched for us. A few weeks ago, Brother Celestino delivered a catechesis. Fleeting remarks endure. It's like a drop of light that comes all at once. Then it has to be you who has the patience. I keep a small notebook where I jot things. Maybe I'll tear it up. Meanwhile, I jotted a few notes as requested. I won't say by whom, backed into a corner because it was a penance. There is a friar among us who does sensational, extraordinary things in the most obvious way, like the consecration to Russia. That says it all. And this thing says, so then you have to sit down and write, but this detail was just to tell you that Padre Pio. Then he said to you a very simple answer to you. And then he adds, otherwise with whom? He mounted the cross, arms out for us, and died. I mean, now let's get to the point, because we're now at the conclusion. We can imagine. I ask this question to the 𝐴𝐴𝐴𝐴𝐴 because Padre Pio today, since they say, setting him against Don Minutella, which causes suffering. Padre Pio, who says, had I been alive, I am now telling you things, and had I mistakenly urged you to obey, you would have done well to keep listening to your conscience. Because if your conscience is clear in the awareness of how things truly are, you must continue to follow that conscience. Unless you are recognized as a legitimately appointed pastor, one who first and foremost holds genuine jurisdiction, that is, a bishop, because you are a priest, but a bishop with authentic jurisdiction, and moreover, because he is a Catholic bishop. Otherwise, you are not bound to obey, St. Thomas Aquinas teaches. So Padre Pio knows theology and says you should have gone. But anyway, I'm going to ask a question that no one answers, least of all the traditionalists, from another angle. Because what do traditionalists do? They don't accept Bergoglio, but basically they don't accept any of the popes since the council. There is a shameful, in my opinion, truly shameful post by Professor Martino Mora, whom I otherwise respect because I like what he says about the global political situation. I like his views. Too bad he's got the baculus of quasi-sedevacantist traditionalism, so on the anniversary of John Paul II, go and see what he wrote about Wojtyła. So is it true or not? Weeks ago, Brother Celestino gave a catechesis, remarks that can linger forever. Praise Jesus Christ, onward Mary. Was he obedient to the pontiffs? I would like to ask the traditionalists, is it not enough that Padre Pio was obedient to all the popes of the post? Council until Paul VI, he died under him. The old calendar honors St. Vincent Ferrer tomorrow, my martyrology confirms. He was a revered Dominican with many Italian churches. What do they say? Behind me, as I said Monday, is Minutella's holy face, present until Easter in holy and coffee, a motherly call to behold Jesus' love and passion. On the other hand, I ask you, 𝐴𝐴𝐴𝐴, but in your opinion, would Padre Pio obey Bergoglio today? He climbed the cross, arms outstretched for us, and died there. Would Padre Pio have blessed gay couples? Would Padre Pio have given communion to a divorced couple? Would Padre Pio have given absolution to everyone? Would Padre Pio have spoken of a Saint Francis as an environmentalist? Would Padre Pio have rejoiced at the declaration that all religions are
il
equal?
profeta Elia dei nostri giorni.
In the old calendar, tomorrow is St. Vincent Ferrer's Day, a Dominican saint revered throughout Italy, with many churches and convents honoring him on the first Friday. Dear ones, today, penance, fasting, prayer. I say no, the prophet Elijah of our days, the man of fire. You are clever and cunning, since 𝐦𝐚𝐝𝐸 cannot speak because he is dead. After all, why don't those in heaven speak more? Sometimes I'm amazed because they give me an answer. Indeed, because our mission on earth is over. Now we can intervene from the bliss of heaven, not like you. Truly, in fact, it's up to you. Keep Jesus in our hearts, thank and adore him. You do not require us in terms of additional time point presence. I'm not sure I can say this. His words from heaven defy repetition. Padre Pio says, "My son, you must do your part. From heaven I do what I can, because when I was on earth I did my part. I cannot do more now. But not because I am limited, but because heaven is not like earth. And on the contrary, it is earth that is not like heaven." In the old calendar, St. Vincent Ferrer is commemorated tomorrow, not today, as the martyrology confirms. This Dominican saint was once widely honored throughout Italy, with many churches and convents dedicated to him, even on the first Friday of the month. My son, we already know how this is ending. Don't worry. I mean, don't expect me to intervene, because God has already decided everything. We are in eternity, you see. Careful, they say, some more, some less, they see. Saints do not all see future contingents in the same way, but according to the degree of the lumen gloriae that God grants, and sometimes not even because of that, because there may be a saint who is appointed by heaven to a mission of accompaniment for a particular work. And so God reveals to him things that another saint might not know. Got it? Tomorrow is St. Vincent Ferrer's Day. So would you want Padre Pio to side with this false church? And on that note, I wanted to read to you. Well, I wrote it in my book. I refer you to further insights on everything I'm saying. Padre Pio, who are you with? Where are you? Oh, you, otherwise with whom? Why with us? Why is Padre Pio with us? Why are there factions? No, because we, the little remnant, are the only ones who openly, and we, with unwavering resolve, defend the Catholic faith without compromise. We say no to communion for the divorced and remarried. We say no to the blessing of gay couples. We say no to religious syncretism, reaffirming the salvific uniqueness of Jesus Christ. We say that Bergoglio is not the Pope, and has not been for years, Don Minutella in particular. He says what Padre Pio told Donamorth in 1960. Gabriele, Satan has entered the church's heart and will soon rule a false church. From an interview, I also draw these things from my book. Granted, in 2011, you can find my books available. To Father Gabriele Amorth, who spent 26 years with Padre Pio, the Spanish journalist José María Zavala asks, "Forgive me, but does a third secret of Fatima exist, Padre Pio? Was he referring to the loss of faith within the church?" Father Gabriele furrows his brow and juts out his chin. He seems deeply struck. Indeed, one day, Padre Pio told me, with great sorrow, "You know, Gabriele, it is Satan who has entered into the heart of the church, and before long he will come to rule a false church." Question, my God, a sort of antichrist. When did he prophesy this? Praise Jesus Christ, Marion. It must have been around 1960, since I was already a priest by then. Question, was that why John the 23rd was so panicked about making the third secret of Fatima public? Because he didn't want the faithful to think he was an anti-pope or something like that. Father Amort smiles. A smile odd. Question, did Padre Pio tell you anything else about natural disasters, the future, earthquakes, floods, wars, epidemics, famine? Did he allude to the same plagues prophesied in the Holy Scriptures? Answer, he didn't care about any of that. Wars, earthquakes, famines, as terrifying as they proved to be, except for the great apostasy within the church. This was the issue that truly tormented him. Be aware that Father Amorth used the word tormented. Father Pio was tormented by the idea that a false church might be born, as was later revealed through another path to Monsignor Fulton Sheen. In every way, it will seem like the Catholic Church. And in fact, people fall for it. The problem is Dominatella, who is disobedient to Pope Francis. People fall for it. They believe that that is the Church of Rome and the Catholic Church. because in every way it will look like the Catholic Church, but in reality, it will be the mystical body of the Antichrist, and so on. So now, to conclude, because time is running out, I would have liked to say much more about Padre Pio and this church. I now turn to the final part of my book, Padre Pio, Man of God, which break time is also placed alongside. And I'll read you the last pages I wrote in one go. On page 398, the stigmata of Padre Pio, or the genes of post-conciliar priests. Back on Holy and Coffee, what stands out most to the eyes of today's Catholics? What really seems more appealing? The statue of Padre Pio in his habit and with the tonsure, the gloves hiding the stigmata, recent photographic material, certainly not from some distant past. Or the priest in jeans and an unbuttoned shirt, casual and uninhibited, with no longer the slightest trace of sacredness. There is no doubt that the dominant and successful model, especially under the monocratic regime of the media, is the second one, whereas the first is considered tridentine, outdated, futile, pointless. You will never see Rai Uno or Mediaset interviewing a priest linked to the Italiare tradition. They appear, yet it's unclear why they must, assuming they even wear a collar. And yet Padre Pio died only in 1968, which means, as we write, a few years ago, 55 years ago, which isn't a small number, but then again, not that many either. Of course, the processes of change are now lightning fast, and the era in which the Holy Friar died now truly seems to belong to many centuries ago. Again, I repeat, yesterday San Giovanni Rotondo no longer seemed like the San Giovanni Rotondo of the early 2000s. It only occasionally becomes so again for a few. So today, at most, Padre Pio is considered a good saint, which, however, seems to have nothing to say to the accelerated course of the neo-modernist church. And reconcile. But above all, there is one aspect that the new church, Bergoglio's church, seems unable to forgive Father Pio for. Even today, and this is evident from the critical and suspicious readings that occasionally circulate on social media, he is not forgiven for having borne the stigmata for 50 years, that is, the visible signs of the Passion of Jesus. If we have carried out this arduous work on Padre Pio, I truly invite you to read it. Yesterday, a bond with Padre Pio was reborn. Although I always feel him close, yesterday he made himself known. Even while testing our inadequacy, it is because we believe that soon the model embodied by Padre Pio will once again triumph over the bigoted one of the modernists, that is, the street priest who leaves the sacristies, as they used to say in the 70s, going out, to use an expression of Bergoglio, who might even skip the daily celebration of Mass, because Bergoglio, when he was Bishop of Buenos Aires, encouraged priests not to celebrate Mass every day so as not to waste time. After all, there are only a few faithful, a few elderly people, and to pray when they can, having turned into an activist for the rights of the excluded, the outcasts, defending ecology, embracing the rainbow agenda. Maybe he even gets married. That's the issue. I said it. Welcome back to Holy and Coffee. Maybe he'll get married and even bless gay unions. There was still no trust, he begs. This model is clearly false because it appears superficially successful, and its apparent success is achieved only through anti-Christian and anti-Catholic media. When in reality the churches are increasingly empty, the message of the gospel no longer has any impact on consciences, dramatically so, especially among the young. What matters above all is that his Mass reveals his true character. In recent days, a series of posts have emerged on the Facebook profile of Rosalina Di Luna, sparking concern as they pertain to Father Lucas, the Polish priest who reportedly bore the stigmata and who has sadly passed away. He died. A few weeks ago, Brother Celestino gave a catechesis. His words endure. Suddenly, in spite of his long illness, well, you're one of those who probably knew him, so you defend him. And there is a beautiful reflection about priests that goes like this. My son, it is Jesus speaking to Father Lucas. My son, priests who are not called by vocation reveal themselves. First of all, how they celebrate Holy Mass. This is Jesus speaking. First of all, how they celebrate Holy Mass, which is the center of priestly life. Dear ones, it's penance, fasting, and prayer. If priests celebrate the Eucharist in a hurry and without focus, this is still Jesus speaking to Father Lucas. It means they do not have a true relationship with me. Those priests who rush through Mass quickly, hastily, who clearly celebrating Mass burdens them. Thank God, you of the small remnant can only thank the Madonna that you have these 6 priests who all celebrate with decorum and reverence. Perhaps in terms of strictly following the rules, I don't know if you all agree, I would group Don Enrico and Father Iohannes together. They're the ones who are almost perfect, especially when compared to myself. If priests celebrate the Eucharist in a hurry and without concentration, it means they have no true relationship with me, and so they are subject to the temptation of an evil spirit that cannot remain with me. This is beautiful. That is why today I ask my faithful to make a choice and make the effort to find priests who celebrate the liturgy without haste and with great reverence. Flowers, dear ones, penance, fasting, prayer today. So instead, the priest people want is the one who gets married, who blesses gay unions, who defends ecology and the agenda of the Italian bishops. This model is false because it is not successful. Padre Pio embodies a model considered outdated, which is actually evergreen because it brings back the timeless one from the Curé of Ars to Don Bosco. The care of souls, liturgical zeal, love for Christ, Eucharistic devotion. In Mariana, they will once again make the difference. When the new Pentecost arrives, we may bid farewell to the humble friar with stigmata. Like the new Elijah who came to bring fire to the earth, preparing the way. Eschatological renewal. As Alessandro Pranzato writes, Padre Pio is never reassuring, break time point, but alarming. He is a disturber of personal peace. The remedies he imposes do not belong to the placebo category. Shall we say it all? Padre Pio proves hard to stomach even for the most resilient. Not just a difficult character, but an impossible one. One would be tempted to comment, weeks ago, Brother Celestino gave a catechesis. Passing remarks endure. Yeah, but which springs? There are no springs on the market that allow you to grasp this friar without getting burned. And so I come to the conclusion, dear Padre Pio, but what do you think about the gay blessings proposed and implemented by the German bishops? And I wrote this when there was still no confidence about it. So let's add dramatically, is it now being proposed as official doctrine of Rome? Is it possible that God blesses situations of sin and changes his mind about what is revealed in the Bible? Has he perhaps changed his mind? Contemplate Jesus, thank and adore him. He climbed the cross, arms out, dying for us. Padre Pio of the Church of Law, 194. The one in favor of abortion, defended and promoted by Cardinal Matteo Zuppi of Bologna. You who used to drive away women who had abortions, calling them murderers. Those are your own words? Changing your mind? Church, are you Padre Pio? Come on, tell us please, are you an 𝐸𝐴𝐶 Padre Pio? Or are you also waiting for him, the moderate Pope, Pius XIII? Poor souls, many are afraid that Don Minutella might be right yet again. The thing is, what's coming at the beginning won't make it obvious. It's not like they're stupid, otherwise they'd lose their base, because there is a strategy to infiltrate. So at first he'll seem like Pope Francis, and then we'll have to be patient, but little by little he'll drop the mask. Contemplate Jesus, thank and adore him. Is it possible that today the Church might defend laws in favor of abortion, or authorize the Eucharistic communion for political figures like Biden of global significance, who are staunchly pro-abortion? Is this possible? And then, my dear Father, would you have approved of the churches and parishes remaining closed during the first wave of that stuff, eh? Promoting that thing too? Was it not the defeat of faith? Shouldn't the bishops, who had by then become increasingly cold bureaucrats of a worldly power, have stood by the people at that moment, face masks, trivial restrictions, propaganda, a mixed buxy that ended up replacing the proclamation of the gospel? Would you have agreed with all this? That it was an act of love? What is instead causing people to die in droves? Not to mention communion in the hands, the revision of the Missal in Italian, which introduces the invocation to the dew. You would have recited the altered Our Father Padre Pio completely unfaithful to the original gospel version. What is happening, Father? Even where you are in San Giovanni Rotondo, there's bleak emptiness. Where are you? Perhaps what you told Donna Mort in 1960, that is, that Sanatana would enter the church and would eventually govern the church. Is it coming true? And why don't the 𝐸𝐴𝐻𝐿 notice it? They're your devotees. How do they manage to keep you inside this church? You're on our side, aren't you? Because we are often told that we should have obeyed like you did. But would you really have obeyed these unjust laws today? Are we supposed to imagine you at the altar of Santa Maria delle Grazie with your bleeding hand, blessing two people of the same sex? He climbed the cross, arms outstretched, dying for us. Wouldn't you have expelled from the church the bishop on a bicycle and the bishops dressed as clowns? And the idolatrous Pachamama ritual at the Vatican. We talked about it a lot. We raised our voices. Did you see the bishops, like madmen, carrying it in procession? Padre Pio, that horrid fetish, as if they were venerating the Virgin Mary? Did you see in the Vatican gardens? It's a letter I had written to Padre Pio at the end of this book. Your Franciscan confreres prostrating themselves to worship Pachamama, your brothers, that friar. He was really a Capuchin. He was a Capuchin. Above all, did you see that the sorcerers came into the Vatican to perform a demonic ritual? Isn't this the official rite of the false church foretold by the prophecy? And what do you think about the Italian basilicas turned into taverns, with bishops acting as waiters serving baked lasagna and trays of pizza, with Muslim socks resting on the holy waters and their backs turned to the altar and the tabernacle? Did you see Padre Pio, the Mass celebrated at sea, with the lilo used as an altar, the priest in a swimsuit, his faithful attending the Mass all in swimsuits? And the other rite with the priest in cycling gear and the hosts flying about with no respect whatsoever? Did you see the priests, clowns, bicycles at the altar, tribal dances in sacred areas, ballets and parades between the balustrades and the altars? Did you see, Father, how they forced Benedict XVI, the true Pope, to resign? How he was treated, attacked, isolated, targeted, so that he would leave. It was the Calvary of the Vicar of Christ, and everyone abandoned him. Tell me, Father Pio, is it not perhaps a grace for you not to have lived in our times? They say around here that you would have obeyed, and we are asking you one last time. Please, Padre Pio, is that so? Are you saying you'd give the Eucharist with your wounded, bleeding hands to the divorced and remarried? To those who live in a state of moral disorder, objective disorder, that is, the reason for the so-called exclusion, I cannot believe it. No, Padre Pio, you would not have done it. God willed that I ascend to heaven before the great darkness of faith. You would have agreed today to bless gay people at the altar. I can't believe it. And I don't believe either that you wanted to blindly obey a superior who, besides being unfit, is also a heretic and an apostate. And so, dear Father Pio, help us and do not leave us alone. Help us to sustain our fight for the faith. You said, my comfort comes from prayer, which renews our strength. Help us to pray, Father Pio, and support us until this storm passes, so that hope lights our way. In fact, pray with us, especially so that we may endure to the end and never give up. Father Pio, where are you? Look behind me, as I said on Monday, is the holy face of Minutella, staying with us until Easter in holy and coffee. The Church, like a mother, now calls us to truly see Jesus, his mystery of love, and the passion he suffers